And today is the 24th of March, and today is podcast, All the Leads Mastermind podcast number 371. And as Jim always says, hello to all of you exemplary real estate agents, investors, and other interested callers. Hey, folks, it's going to be a good call today. We've got a good crowd already. Look forward to hearing your successes, answering your questions, chatting with you about what's going on in the world. We've got some stuff to talk about with you, but certainly want to hear from you first. And I see that Bruce and Chuck are both on. You guys all here ready to rock and roll?
We are here.
Yes, absolutely. I definitely wanted to, expand on a conversation that Bruce and I were having earlier, if you want to get into that before we start taking some calls, unless you've got any announcements, Tim.
No, you go right ahead with that, and I'm going to save anything I have for later. We've got one person in the queue. Just want to say one other thing, and that is to hop in the queue and talk with Chuck or talk with Bruce or talk with me and get your questions answered, or tell us how things are going in your marketplace. Hit *6 and 1, and you'll be next after Cliff.
Okay.
Go ahead, Chuck.
So Bruce, I take care of most of the orientation calls, kind of getting people up and running. They've just signed up. They're ready to go. They're really excited about starting to market to, personal representatives of probate cases, and now reaching out to pre-probate leads. And one of the I would have to say the number one question that people are asking me is, what's this going to take for me to be successful? And everybody has their own definition of successful. And, but that's something that we're dealing with our strategy coaching calls, and you definitely touch on with the courses and seminars. But let's take a few minutes and kind of talk about, what does it take to be successful in probate as either an investor or an agent?
Mm-hmm. Yep. Well, it's interesting, Chuck, because for those of you that weren't privy to this, Chuck and I had a conversation just this morning talking about some of the clients that are absolutely crushing it. They're, a lot of people come into All the Leads, they subscribe, they start getting pre-probate leads, inheritance leads, or probate, and they get super involved. And then a lot of times we'll see people kind of disappear for a little bit. And normally that disappearance could mean one of two things. It either means that they are killing it, they're busier than they've ever been, and they're too busy to jump on the mastermind calls or coaching calls, or maybe they're killing it and they don't want everyone to know what they're doing. Okay. On the flip side of the coin, maybe they're falling behind and they're a little embarrassed. Okay. And we know that happens with a lot of people. A lot of folks come in with big plans and they don't, I'm going to say big goals. Let's, for those of you that were on the DNA call yesterday, where we talked about building out your business plan, you may come in with a big goal, which is a good kind of 30,000 foot view, and you have the right direction, but you don't have a plan to account for the territory that you find yourself in. So they come in with a big goal, and then their plan doesn't take them through to the objective that they have, and they fall behind, and they don't want to show up and tell people, you know what, I haven't done anything. I haven't actually implemented a plan. I haven't made a call. I haven't sent any letters. I haven't done these things. And so the first thing that it takes when you're getting started or when you are restarting, and I'm going to challenge those of you on this call, if you have been with All the Leads or you've been working really any lead source for that matter, if it hasn't been working out, today is the day to hit the restart button. Pretend like you're starting from scratch, and it's time to put your plan together. That is step number one, is you've got to have a plan, and that plan has to be more than, I want to sell 24 houses a year out of probate. That's a great idea. It's a great concept. A lot of people also say, hey, I want to make $250,000 a year out of probate or inheritance leads. Great concept, but how are you going to do that? You need to put a plan together that gets kind of granular. You start big and you work small so that you know what it's going to take on a daily basis. If you were in the class yesterday, you already know this. If you weren't, I showed everyone on the class a plan of how to make $350,000 a year by making 44 phone calls a day. That doesn't mean 44 conversations a day. That just means 44 phone calls a day. So we worked it back into that much detail where everyone that was on that call knows I get up, I make an hour's worth of calls, I make $350,000 a year. And there's a little more to it than that, but that's where you have to start. You've got to know what your daily activities are. Okay,
and
Chuck,
I think
I want to
if
know
I can,
from you. Go ahead.
Yeah, I think the key right there that you were talking about is it's every day. It's the consistency. The folks that I'm talking to and we're refining strategy or we're touching base on accountability, the folks that put their head down, put the blinders on and say, okay, I now have my plan and it's time to execute. And I'm going to do this day in, day out and follow my plan. Those are the ones that magically are doing the business and their plan is working. So I think it really comes down to initially looking at all the leads, not strictly as a lead source or a lead generation activity. It really can be its own business model and its very specific plan that you bolt on, or you move some things that maybe aren't working as well for you in today's current market environment. And you're able to say, okay, now I have a plan through all the lead system that gives me the ability. It's very cut and dry. There's specific actions that I need to take. There's a way I need to think about approaching these folks so I can ultimately help them overcome the obstacles that they're dealing with. And implementing that day in and day out and fighting through what may be monotonous work, but that monotonous work is what's really going to pay off and build relationships with the people that they're reaching out to and contacting to ultimately help them and be rewarded for the value that they provide.
Yep. It's a mindset, Chuck. It's a mindset. So we've been discussing an individual. We'll leave this person nameless. Not a subscriber, just someone that we'll leave nameless for now. Who prospects and does a lot of prospecting on YouTube live. Okay, and when I coach or you coach a lot of our subscribers, they show up and they say, I don't know what to say. What if I get cussed out? What if? And they get kind of the what if syndrome. And what if is usually geared towards the negative. And so they go into their daily activities, or they go into planning their daily activities, and they're planning one of the things that they're absolutely dreading. And for most, that's a phone call. And we have a lot of subscribers on here, and probably a bunch of people here who love the phone, who don't dread the phone. By the way, guys, if you want to know where that secret is, that's where it is. We've got people all over the country that pick the phone up and make dials every day. And it doesn't mean that they have to spend 8 hours a day doing it, but they might do 30, 40 minutes, an hour, sometimes 2 hours, and they just do it religiously, just like going to the gym, just like eating right, just like meditating, waking up on time. You do it consistently, and that's where the success is. But the difference between you, if you're afraid of the phone, and someone who's really good at it is the attitude. And it's hilarious to watch the best people that jump up and they take step number 2, which is picking the phone up. They take that and even when it's live and you can hear their call and see what's happening, you'll get someone that cusses them out or someone that hangs up on them. And this individual I'm thinking of, he'll do a little dance and he'll go, I love it. okay? It takes a shift in mindset. After you have a plan, it takes a shift in mindset into, number one, you're helping people, okay? If you had a cure for cancer, would you make that call? I would argue that yes, you would probably call everyone you could. What if I told you I'm going to give you a cure for cancer, and you go, okay, I'm going to call everyone. And what if I told you that 50% of the people that you're going to call are going to say you're full of crap? Okay. What if I told you that? They're going to tell you you're full of crap. Would you still make that call? And I would hope that the answer is yes. I would hope the answer is yes. Well, probate, we're offering on our probate and our inheritance calls, we're offering something that is insanely valuable. It might not be a cure for cancer, but it's going to be unbelievably valuable for the average lead that you get. And 50% don't answer and cuss you out. It doesn't happen. It might be like 0.5% at most of people that pick the phone up and get mad at you. So if you truly believe that what you're offering is valuable, why would you be scared to offer it? Why? All right. And if you don't know what to say, we get that. We can fix that. If you don't know what to say, but it really does take consistency. That's where you have to start. Go ahead, Tim.
Yeah. I was going to ask a question, and I know that you're a big proponent of this as well. And the whole point behind our recommendation that certainly we definitely want people to follow up on the telephone and get that done, but the whole idea in setting that first phone call up or subsequent phone calls up with the mailings that we do, why don't you talk a little bit about that with the theory of the warmer call versus just a straight cold call, following up on the letter or postcard that they received.
So let me take this to start. So one of the things that we find very regularly is many personal representatives, people that are now in charge of an estate, they may not be willing to admit that they don't feel up to the task because it could be overwhelming. They may not have the experience of being a manager or a leader. You're going to find some people that have a career as a project manager and they're going to be rip-roaring ready to go. But some people start to get a little bit, they're nervous and they're going to be overwhelmed quickly depending on the specific scenario. You've got family dynamics, etc. So going back to the mail, these people are regularly in the 50-plus category and generation, and many of the people that are in that generation like to have something physical in their hand. That is their view and their perspective of, okay, well, they're more professional because they've sent me something in the mail. And I know it sounds a little wonky. I mean, we're not talking about yellow letters here. We are talking about a professional value piece of mail that is offering services that is able to alleviate the stresses and fears that the personal representative may have in their mind, and being able to relate them to that professional by receiving that in the mail, whether it's the trifold color brochure and then followed up with a postcard that matches the design and the branding, or it's a letter that's speaking to them saying, oh yeah, I'm scared to death of having to deal with this aspect, and going through all the personal property and lining up estate sales for personal property and these types of things. So alleviating that with a letter, it's very, very regular that they will set that into their file cabinet for their important probate documents. And being that person that can follow up and say, yes, I sent you that particular piece of mail. Did you get it? Did you have any particular questions? I am here to help you. And how you handle that conversation leading with that helping hand, they are so complimentary that yes, you can smile and dial and be effective. Yes, you can only send direct mail, but putting the two together into a systematic, consistent approach will give you the best results.
Mm-hmm. Yep. So I'm going to tell you guys two stories here real quick. And the first is probate, and the second is non-probate, but it's going to help reinforce what Chuck was just saying. In probate, I remember one of my very first deals, I showed up, and the woman, and I've heard countless stories that are just like this. The woman that I was working with at the time, pulled a shoebox out, and in that shoebox were letters that she had received from really everyone since she'd opened probate. And for the most part, everyone in that shoebox had sent one letter, maybe two. Occasionally, they'd thrown a postcard in, and she pulled 5 or 6 of my letters out. Okay, so immediately, she didn't say, I kept these and called you because you sent me more mail, but I know that she called me because I outlasted the competition. So if you are going to do mail, you do need to outlast or have a more valuable proposition than your competitors are. And the majority of your competitors are going to be sending mail out that says, hey, I see you inherited 123 Main Street. Do you want to sell the house? Okay, so you need to offer that helping hand. You do need to offer that. Now, she'd pulled that out, so people do keep marketing messages that you send. We are going to drive the point home that you have to follow those up with a phone call. That warms the phone call up. Now, the next story that I was going to tell you guys is about buyer leads. So there are investors on here that probably aren't familiar with, or probably don't get pay-per-click leads, but those of you that are agents have probably all worked pay-per-click leads, and I used to do that all the time. Very heavily. We would go, pump out ads on Google and Facebook, and we'd get people to register and go into our CRM and database, and we'd start to drip properties on them and drip valuable real estate information on them. And I would call. And for years I did this, and I always had about the same answer rate. And normally that conversation would go like this: hey, can I speak with Chuck? Chuck would say, yeah, this is Chuck. I'd say, hey, it's Bruce Hill. Do you happen to recognize my name? And they'd go, no, who are you? Okay, and that was always the thing. Now, I got a decent conversion rate out of that, but it was always kind of like a cold call, even though I'd been emailing them. Let me say that, emailing them. So I changed the approach up one day to, in the subject line of every single email, I'd say what the email was about in the subject line, and I'd put a hyphen, and then I'd say, from Bruce Hill, right in the subject line, from Bruce Hill. And that would make it where when I started to call, instead of saying, hey, it's Bruce Hill, do you happen to recognize my name? And them saying no, I'd say, hey, this is Bruce Hill. And they'd say, oh, hey, Bruce. I don't care if I've never had a conversation with them before. It immediately changed the tone of that dialogue because they knew me from my consistent email at the time. So we want to take that principle and apply it into the probate space. So if you're going to do mail, do mail. Do mail. And I realize this is not inside of everyone's budget. If your budget only allows for a letter and a postcard, or a brochure and a postcard or something like that, that's okay. It's better than nothing. But I'll tell you guys, if you're going to do mail, make it count. Make it count. Let it last. Let it be valuable. Mix in some postcards, things like that, because what I want for you guys to do is either get that call 5 or 6 months into a campaign from the person that you've never gotten on the phone, or for you to make that outbound call about the time that you were ready to give up on someone. You've called them 7 or 8 times, you've left them 7 or 8 messages, and then you go, you know what, I'm going to call one more time. And this has happened to me countless times. They answer the phone and you say, hey, this is Bruce Hill at Probate Solutions, whatever your company name is. And I want them to say, hey, Bruce, how's it going? Or, hey, Bruce, I've been meaning to call you. This is a person that is cold to you. You've never talked to them. You don't know them. But all of a sudden, because you've combined a mailing campaign with those phone calls, they know you. They know more about you and more about your business than you even thought that they did. You thought that they were permanently ignoring you. They weren't. They were getting through the process. They just weren't ready to talk. So you've got to be there when they're ready to talk. Most of these leads are mid-tree fruit, which means that month 1, they may not be ready to talk right now. But with consistency, And with a runway and seeding the ground, you're going to get business. Okay, so the majority of people that struggle in this space, if you struggle, it's typically going to be because you're going at it without, from the standpoint of, I'm going to go reap a harvest. But you've got to seed the ground. You have to, and you have to do that with mail, phone calls, and when someone checks you out, you should have a good online presence that deals with transitions, probate, estates, inheritance, things like that. Okay, and I've run far too long. Anyone want to jump in on that topic?
No, I think that's great, and I think you're doing a great job. Let's finish her up, and we'll get to the queue. Go ahead, Chuck.
Yeah, I think, when we talk about the digital presence, it doesn't have to be super big and elaborate. It can be, as the credibility sites that we offer at All the Leads, something so that way they can reference to it. Now, building this out as a primary focus and really going all into probate, then you can start expanding into additional digital asset categories and having videos. And maybe it's not from a search perspective, but when you have people that start to be aware of your brand and they can come in and they can start to see your face on a video and having video into, whether it's different blog segments, whether it's once every other week or it's once a month. I mean, some way for them to be able to see you on a screen gives you that, and it still happens, even though video has become a lot more proliferated throughout social media, et cetera, it still gives you that relevance factor of, okay, they're speaking from a position of authority and they can help lead me to where I want to go and achieve my goals.
Great job, guys.
Yep.
And this is just a sampling of, I think, the stuff that goes on every time we do a foundations class, every time we do the things that we do for you, that we offer for training. This is the kind of information that you're going to get. But more importantly, our coaches spend time, Chuck and Bruce spend time batting the ball back and forth to basically feed off each other and feed off you and get more information so they can distill it in a way that makes sense for you. And as we work with you, we learn more about what your needs are. And that's, we're not just sitting here every week waiting on the same things to happen every week. I want to point out one other thing. This is kind of a pro tip for dialers. One of the things you might need to do if you use your phone a lot, and they're talking about making a bunch of phone calls and doing it regularly and consistently, here's the reality. If you do that often enough, you're going to at least singe or tarnish your phone number. What I mean by that is, it used to be that, your business number was your business number and you didn't have a problem with it. The reality is, the more you use that number, the more likely that you're going to run into someone who wants to flag your call as spam, or the phone company is going to see that you're making a lot of outbound calls, and sometimes their own algorithms will begin to flag them because you're using the phone so much. Seems incongruent with what we do for a living, but it does happen. What you need to do to make sure that that doesn't happen to you is occasionally make sure that you call somebody from each of the providers in your local market, T-Mobile, Verizon, and AT&T. Those are the three big ones. Call someone on each of those phone systems. Find somebody that's there, and make sure that your phone number doesn't show up on their phone as flagged for spam. We find this a lot with our phone numbers here because we're on the phone all the time, particularly our account representatives and our support people. And we end up having to go in and unflag our accounts. We have to contact the phone company and say, hey, why are you flagging us for spam? It's a business number. Sometimes they'll release them, sometimes they won't. The other thing that we do is that we actually rotate our phone numbers on the outbounds because we run our own phone system. If you find you're having that problem, start off by calling your telephone carrier and ask them why your numbers are getting flagged. But you need to check that your phone is getting through and not instantly showing up as spam, because if it does, you're wasting your time making phone calls to a lot of people that will never see them. And when we start seeing our call connect rates go down, we know that's typically what's happened. So please keep track of that. The only other thing I was going to point out, and I forgot to do this in the beginning, Jim is not with us today. He's the voice that you usually hear hosting these calls. I'm Tim, and I'm hosting today in Jim's absence. Jim is helping his father-in-law move into a new apartment, and so he's doing Good Samaritan duty today and being a good son-in-law. So Chuck and Bruce and I are here holding down the fort. We've had people waiting patiently to get into the queue, and I apologize for making you wait for so long, but we're going to go ahead and get after that now and take some of you guys. Call ending in 3057, Cliff.
Hi, guys. I was wondering I have like 3 questions. The first one is, how are you guys getting pre-probate leads when you don't know? I mean, when someone all of a sudden writes a letter to the daughter writes a letter, the husband died. 5 years later, the daughter writes a letter to assisted living facility because she wants to move her mom into this facility because they're becoming senile or whatever the problem is. How do you know who that lead is?
So, I'm sorry, but I'm not sure quite. Are you asking what the source is of those leads?
Yeah, how do you know when somebody's pre-probate?
Well, so pre-probate typically is a nicer way of saying, in a lot of respects, it's notice of death. So when someone passes away, there's always an official notice of that death. There are numerous sources for that. Some of them are funeral notices. Some of them are official notices of death in newspapers. Some of them are legacy notices that happen from those kinds of sources. That's where most of that begins. And in the situation that you mentioned, where it's a husband and wife, and for example, the husband passes away, that will become noted and become potentially a pre-probate lead. We'll determine with the research that we do as best we can if in fact there is real estate owned by the decedent when they passed away. In many cases, sometimes that is a joint tenancy with right of survivorship. And so, they're not putting somebody out in the street at that point. The point is that we do it at the point that we note that there's a death from someone who owned property. At that point, if you have got that lead and you establish a relationship with that family, when we'll just use the example, when the father died and the wife is still living, you establish that relationship and you became a friend to that family when that happened. Then when it is time and mom is moving into an assisted living facility, then they're going to call on you because they already know the people to deal with in terms of doing that. They know that you've got clean out services. They know that you've got a lot of the people that can help them get that job done. So it's a long-term process in some cases on pre-probate, and sometimes it's instantaneous. In pre-probate, sometimes the day that someone passes away is a day of instant panic for a family, because that family may instantly be facing hardship that they didn't prepare for. The breadwinner has just passed away, or the patriarch has just passed away, and they may have died with or without a will. Who knows? And it's at that point that they're completely kind of up in the air in a lot of cases. And if you approach it correctly, again, you've built a relationship that will last a long time. Pre-probate is early in the game. Sometimes you'll find low-hanging fruit. Sometimes it's going to be months before anything happens at all there. I don't know if I answered your question, but that's kind of,
I think I thought pre-probate meant before they died, like they were at the end of life, but they didn't die yet. But now I understand that pre-probate means somebody already died. So
right, it just hasn't yet. It has not yet gone to probate.
And how do you get leads pre-probate, before somebody dies? Do you guys do that at all?
No, I can't think of a good way to do that unless you're not really
prospecting.
I would give you I'd give you a facetious answer. It wouldn't be a good answer. Unfortunately, I don't think there's a good way to do that. I will tell you this, and this is something to think about. We know that we have a caller who's frequently on, and one of the things that he always does and has made a practice out of doing, he's built his practice around probate, and his whole career has changed in the last 4 or 5 years. And he has gone and spent a tremendous amount of time with the administrators at all of the assisted living, memory care, nursing home, all of those places. And he's become the person that they refer people to when someone comes in, a family comes in, and that situation has occurred. The exact situation that you're talking about. They're moving mom in and they know there's still a house. It just becomes part of the intake at the facilities where he's their guy. They ask the question. So let me ask a question. Is there real estate involved in your mother's house? Is that something you could use some help with? Because it's part of their intake to determine the financial wherewithal of the people that they're dealing with. It's part of the insurance dog and pony show they have to go through. So that's a great place to build those relationships. And Chuck, Bruce, please go ahead.
Well,
is that what Mom's House, that's what those guys are teaching over there? Is that similar? That's like pre-probate, pre-probate. You guys are pre-probate and probate. Is that how you would define like how the Mom's House thing is similar to like what you guys do?
So pre-probate is mainly just anyone that may or may not need to go into probate. So if somebody has passed away, it's almost always going to stem from a notification of death. So what you're looking at is not going to be the mom that might be moving into an assisted living. When her husband passed away, that would have been a trigger for probate or pre-probate in our system when the husband passed. But if you've missed that window and now the surviving spouse is moving into assisted living, that's going to be completely different. And that primarily should stem from relationships, because there's no public notice given anywhere when that move happens. Now, you could get leads, and hopefully we'll be able to offer these at some point soon. You could get leads that are age specific. So you could potentially target only those over a certain age that are of the age to be moving to assisted living. But it is not something that we currently provide.
What age would
Go ahead, Cliff.
What age?
What age would be assisted living type people?
I'd most likely start somewhere over 75 or 80.
I think you're being careful. I think generally they say 60 plus is the timeline for that. And sadly, we're seeing an increase in assisted living for memory care that simply didn't exist before. And as America becomes a bit more affluent, we're getting better at parking people in facilities that can help them. And I'd say anybody over 60. But Cliff, you asked the question about Mom's House. Mom's House, their specialization is to, honestly, I would say institutionalize what I just told you. They are working to basically not with the assisted living facilities. What they're working with is kind of the other way around. They're trying to encourage the public to affiliate with them, with Mom's House, to, basically provide the services you're talking about providing, but they're providing it, and also they're going after the real estate as well. The rest of it is to find the right people, help find the right facilities for people. So all they're doing is putting together I'm not trying to diminish what they're doing. It sounds like I am. I'm not. But they're putting together a list of the facilities in the area. They're going to those facilities. They're making sure they're comfortable with those people. And then they're going out and finding realtors who are willing to purchase leads that pop out of that program. And that's exactly what you're trying to do going forward. And you can accomplish the same thing by establishing those relationships yourself and potentially get ahead of the game. Mom's House is doing a good job of marketing to a niche. You can do the same thing.
Aren't they doing like Facebook leads to give out a list of all the assisted living groups in, say, Tampa?
Yeah, I can't address it. Yeah. Cliff, I can't address everything they're doing because we don't, that's not the approach that we take, nor do we market to that. So, they have a real estate website, a website that you can certainly take a look at, but they are definitely marketing to get those leads. But if you look at their stated purpose, they're providing a solution that makes sure that mom is safe and get rid of the stress of selling the house, dealing with the stuff, all that sort of stuff. It's in their mission statement.
And
they refer to the people in their group as transition specialists.
Yep. I'm going to throw in and kind of say that whatever you do it's more than a letter. It's more than a single phone call. It's more than one pop by. I'm going to go back to and reference a story that I've told before of a home inspector that used to come into our real estate office like clockwork every 2 weeks with a bowl of candy that always had his logo on it. He'd put a couple of brochures out and he'd build friendships. So you're not going to walk in and say, who are you sending your referrals to when someone needs to sell a house? Okay, bye. And then waiting on the phone to ring. You are building a long-term face-to-face relationship. And once I had that, then you could always follow it up with Facebook ads. You could follow it up with email. You could follow it up with mail. But I want that face-to-face first if I'm building an approach like this. And again, to Tim's point, it's not something that we provide those leads on, but if you're going to build relationships with these organizations that may be facilitating elderly or mental care transitions, you need to start with a face-to-face and then follow it up. And you might not want to pick every single facility in your town or city, depending on how big it is, but pick 5 and make it a part of your 2-week rotation where you go in there every single day and you start establishing a relationship. After that, you can start marketing. Marketing first is probably a mistake here. You want to go face-to-face first and market second.
Yep.
Can you retarget your guys' leads by taking your like database and loading it up into audiences in Facebook and then start targeting like a little video thing of me talking about probate, home sales, or whatever it is? Do you guys, your list, have the email, or it's just the phone and the address?
Depends on the source and what's available.
Yep, it depends.
Could you talk about that a little bit?
I'm going to talk about a couple of things, Tim. I know that you've seen those lists a little more than I have, but the list that I see of our subscribers, sometimes they might have 60% email, 60% might have an email address. Sometimes it's 20%. Sometimes it's 80%. It depends on your county and the source and what that county provides. Another big thing with a skip traced email list. Okay, and that if the email list that we give you, if we've skip traced it, we don't know if that's the email that they used when they signed up for social media. So what I'm going to recommend is you make those calls is that you have a fallback position for anyone that does not want your services right now. And your fallback position should be, hey, I never know if I don't call. You know, hey, 5-10 years down the road, if you ever were to sell, do you have an agent that you'd work with? Okay, yes. Do you think I could send you some information? Yes. What's a good email for you? And now you start to scrape your own email list together by asking for it with a phone call. Now, you could certainly, if you have a high number of emails in what we give you, you could certainly load that into a custom audience in Facebook. That's fine. But we don't know if that's the email that they have tied to their social media accounts or not. So it's not going to have an insanely high accuracy rate.
Are you referring to like those? Are we talking about the $100 leads? Or I was trying for a list, or what? I'm trying to understand the services you guys offer a little bit better. So I can buy the $100 list with 1,000 names on it, or what? What was it again that you guys offer?
Yeah, Cliff, we don't have a $100 list. I don't know what you're referring to. How about we do this? I think that you've got great questions, and we've got a bunch of other people in the queue here. Sorry with you. I'm going to have somebody give you a buzz as soon as we're off this call and maybe dig into some of your questions a little bit more because you're asking great questions. If that's okay with you.
Because I'm a financial advisor. Like I have a Series 65 and life annuity insurance. So I want to do the wholesaling and mix it with the rest of the whole financial plan. So how can I use your leads in that kind of a system is what I'm looking for.
Okay, great. That's great. And we'll definitely have someone get in touch with you after the call. I've got your info down here, and we'll have them reach right out to you.
All right, thanks.
Perfect.
You
Thanks,
bet.
Cliff.
Appreciate the great questions, too. Good job. Okay. Next up, Dwayne, you've been waiting patiently. 4917, last four digits of your phone number.
Do you hear me okay?
I hear you great.
Yep, hear you loud and clear.
Okay, good afternoon, gentlemen. Where I'm at right now is yesterday afternoon, I got my first delivery of leads. And so my question, forgive me if it's a little simplistic, but my question is, what do I do now? Is there a tutorial? Just, getting everything up and running, kind of like learning to ride a bike.
Yep.
Yeah.
So here's what I would recommend that you do first. You want to go lead by lead and look at each personal representative on each of those lead detail pages. You want to be looking for whether or not that personal representative is located in your state or if they are located out of state. Now you can scroll down on that list. We do have a mini CRM, call tracking, data tracking, section on that lead detail page. And I highly recommend that you need to put in out of state PR and do that for every single one. The other thing you want to compare is whether or not the personal representative has the same last name as the decedent, and if they have the same address. Then it can be a surviving spouse. I filter those to the bottom. So call the out-of-state personal representatives first, send your mail to the entire list, and call the surviving spouses last, and be aware that conversation is going to be a little bit different, right? I recommend that you have more of a circle prospecting script for those particular leads.
So when I click on the, I'm
mailing camp set up.
Hey, Dwayne, let me ask you a quick question. Have you been to any of the training that we offer?
Oh yeah, a lot. Pretty much everything that's offered, starting with the original foundations. Yeah, there's a lot of good things said. I've taken a lot of notes, but for me to sit here and look at an email that I just received, it's kind of tedious to me. Go back through many, many pages of notes to try to figure out next step. So that's why I was asking.
Sure. No, it's always curious where the questions come from, and we want to make sure everybody learns in different ways. And, we try to make sure that by the time you've gotten your leads, you've at least had the opportunity to get some semblance of an understanding about where you need to go and all of that. And it's good that you've had all that training. And I think the other thing I'd suggest is if you go back and, were you on the call the entire time since we started? Because the beginning of the call, Chuck and Bruce went over a lot of good stuff in terms of getting started. And that certainly will help you as well.
Yep.
So
that, I did hear that with yes.
Here's what I'm going to say, and I apologize for interrupting you. You are an amazing example of what a lot of people are feeling. So your question is a great example. You have a lot of notes. You've participated in a lot of the trainings. I love the training that we do. I love the engagement. You've been plugged in the whole time. What I find with a lot of people is they come to the training and they learn everything that I've learned over 19 to 20 years in the real estate business and 7 years in the probate niche. And they take all that information and they try to squeeze all that into a month of learning. And it took me 19 years to learn this stuff. And I'll teach you everything that I know. And the issue is that you have to take the very small things and implement those first. And you can add in little pieces that I'll teach or that Chuck will teach or that you learn elsewhere. You can add those in, but you want to start with the foundation pieces. And the foundation pieces are, how do you introduce yourself on the phone? That's step number one. Step number two is, how often are you going to do it? How many calls do you need to make every day? Make those calls, introduce yourself. Don't get bummed out if somebody hangs up on you or doesn't want to talk. You go through the numbers and you make the calls. Step number three is roll in. This might be step number 1 for you. Roll in some mail so that your calls and your conversations are a little warmer. You're starting to build a brand more than just saying, "Hey, do you want to sell the house?" So roll in some mail. If it's too much of a job for you to pick out 7 or 8 letters, go pick out 2 letters. Take baby steps, and then start to pull pieces out of what we teach and plug them in one at a time, instead of saying, "Hey, I've got this elephant on my plate, I've got to eat the whole thing." Small little bites, 1 bite at a time, and it starts with getting a small mailing campaign. It does not need to be huge. As much as I like a big, long 8, 9, 10-month campaign, you can start with 1 or 2 months. It's completely fine. Pick the phone up and call. Make sure that you've practiced your introduction a little bit, okay? And you'll learn more by the experience than you'll ever learn by coming to classes. And that's not to say don't come to classes. I love you being there. Okay. You're one of my favorite people that I like being there, by the way. I want you to keep coming to those, but you'll learn more by doing those 3 things than you'll learn by hearing someone else pontificate on them.
Yeah, I didn't want to interrupt you. Oh, I was just going to.
No, you're good. I'm done. You can ask your question now.
Yeah. I think by now you have a little bit of a read on my temperament and so forth, because I've confessed a little bit. Even to just ask this question was hard. I just sat back, I said, no, I just got to ask it. There may be others that have the same questions, so I'll be helping them.
I bet. Yep.
And it took a while. It took a while for me to get to a point where I really dug in deep enough to recognize why it is that after 20 years of real estate, I'm not doing better than I have over the last few years. And that was very simply, and it also reflects back in early life as far as my difficulty in school and why I ended up dropping out of high school and then went back and got a GED. It has to do with my comprehension or the inability at times. And so I sometimes have the simplest question. That's why I use the learning to ride a bike. I know I learned somewhere. I don't remember when I did, but coming to terms with recognizing that and then realizing that the only way I'm going to get anywhere is simply to ask the question anyway, no matter how simplistic it sounds, because I need to know the answer. And all the sessions have been good. A lot of great stuff there. I can go back and re-listen to some of that. But from time to time, when I ask a question, go ahead.
Yep. Go ahead.
A lot of times, or from time to time, if it's a session like this or in one of your Zoom calls, if I'm asking something where others may say, "Gee, he didn't get it by now," that's just because that's where I'm at. It has to do with being able to process. And once I get it, then I can turn around and explain it to someone else who maybe doesn't quite get it. I can find ways to illustrate, but sometimes things just don't, click with me. So there you go.
All right.
I'll click on the access my leads, the link in here, and then I'll see what that looks like. So thanks again. Appreciate your patience.
Hey, Dwayne, I want to make a point here, and I'm gonna let you go, but I want to say one thing. You just talked from your heart there about the fact that, you have challenges in terms of learning specific ways. And that's one of the challenges that we have in any educational system today. I come from a family where, my dad was a teacher, my niece is a teacher, my sister's a teacher. I've been around teachers my whole life. And one of the things that we've just kind of learned in the last, several decades is all this learning styles. And, it used to be, you teach them right out of the book. That's the way it works. And if everybody doesn't get it, that's too bad. And if you were lucky enough to find a good teacher that realized that a smart person such as you wasn't making the proper connections and wasn't learning well, they would take the time to figure out a way to present it to you in a way that you could learn it better. And, you're getting so far ahead of the game by just admitting that you have that problem. And I'm sure not the first time you've had that discussion with anybody, but, God bless you for, stepping up and saying, I don't always get it the same way everybody else does. I learn it the best way that I can. And I'm sure you're going to do fine. And we're going to take a lot of pleasure in helping you get it together and making a great success story. So you keep doing what you're doing. We'll keep doing what we're doing. And I'm sure that, Bruce and Chuck will be glad to continue to help you grow. And if you got other questions, just type an email to support. We'll be glad to help you out, bud. We do have a bunch of other people in the queue, guys. We only got a few more minutes. Dwayne, if you don't mind, I'm going to move on to the next person.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay? All right.
Yep.
Next up, we have Eric, and Eric is 8511, the last 4 digits. Eric?
All right, so finally getting some headway with some of these phone calls, and I had a personal representative reach out to me after I had met with them, and I gave them the advice of removing this acoustic ceiling that had water stains, and it was basically yellow from smoking. The attorney requested a letter, outlining that I made this recommendation. Can you tell me where I'm at in this process as far as this probate goes?
Did the attorney say why they wanted a letter?
I'm guessing maybe the estate is going to end up paying for it.
Okay, gotcha. Well, that's a really good thing. I mean, it sounds to me like if the estate's planning to pay for it, you've got kind of a locked. Nothing's ever 100%, but it sounds like they're emotionally committed to working with you. So that's good. As far as where you are in the process now, I would just say, hey, when can we meet again to formalize our game plan? I wouldn't say agreement. I would say, when can we meet again to formalize our game plan? And the reason that is really important is because agreement, they're going to have a chance of, you're going to trigger some resistance potentially if they think, hey, I'm showing up to start the listing agreement or the purchase agreement. So game plan is just people they typically really like one of those. So at that point, just show up, get the PR, any family members to go ahead and lock the relationship down, start marketing, or start the buying process on the property. I would also go ahead.
Like, what do I need okay, so I've been in real estate for 17 years, and I normally get called in on these things after all this stuff has been done. Now that I'm starting to focus on this and calling these people, what do I need to see from her that she has the ability to sell the property?
Letters of administration or letters testamentary from the court authorizing her to administer the estate. I would use the opportunity to also meet with the attorney, and probably after you've gotten her signature. So I'd get her signature first saying that you're listing the property, and then use that as an opportunity to meet the attorney and basically tell the attorney that you're not here to step on anyone's toes. You want this to be a good partnership, that anything the attorney needs that's within your power, you're there to help with. Once you've gotten that signature, the attorney will tell you whether you need the other family members to sign or not. The personal representative is typically, in most states, the only person that is needed to sign a listing agreement. You're going to need all the other heirs to sign. Well, you've been in real estate for 17 years, so you know this. You'll need all the other heirs to sign the closing. But I would ask the attorney, after you get the listing agreement signed, what is needed legally to sell the property.
Got it.
Yeah.
Okay. Can I ask you guys one more question?
Sure. You may.
All right. So I realize, like with the last guy said, I think sometimes we just think too much and we think ourselves out of doing what we just need to be doing, which is make the calls. So I put all these people, I had too many different files. I've been with you guys a little bit over a year, and they've all kind of gotten mixed up. So I put them all into Mojo, and I've just been dialing through that. You know, I go back and forth on my scripts, you know, and I like the fact that you guys are saying that we work with families that are going through probate, and that tends to work really well. I'm just having a hard time with the follow-up side of that thing. And okay. What are your thoughts on, I just signed up with this company called AM Cards, which is probably just going to do like a 5-card series. and they're personalized cards. They're automated. It's like $2.15 each. What are your thoughts on doing something like that? Just putting a screenshot of your guys' that circular thing that has all the different services that we offer. Have you known anyone having any success with that at all?
I'm not following.
Bruce said he just got kicked off.
I'm not exactly following the circle what you were looking to do as far as a follow up after you've spoken to someone. Is that what you're referring to?
After I've had a call, I was thinking of going because I've had zero luck with the brochures and all that other stuff, and I've sent out thousands. It's just like, man. But LA is pretty competitive, so I'm going to try to do this greeting card thing and kind of take, I have the website with you guys, kind of take that circle that has all, the pie chart with all the different services that we do offer.
Yep.
Do you know of anyone kind of maybe has tried this in the past and had any success with it, or am I just, throwing more money out the window and just stick with phone calls?
I think after you've spoken to someone, and one of my key focuses is to really try and find a way to get their email address when I'm on the phone with them. So that way it gives me a lot more flexibility for follow-up. If you're going to use a direct mail solution, it's going to be very similar to how we coach on leaving voicemail messages, right? You want to say, whether it's a story or it's a point, where you're delivering, here's a value proposition. So take one of those puzzle pieces on the circle or the value, how we're able to help. You can talk about if they filed probate in, within the past month or in the past 2 months, right? Then pick one of those value propositions that they may be dealing with. Maybe they're going through and they're having to sort all the personal property and decide what's trash and what they want to keep and who's going to get what and those types of things. Well, send them, that mail piece based on the value proposition of how you can help them through where they might be. I try and look into the particular status of where they are, because you can almost create a story in your mind. You may not be exactly right, but to be able to deliver value, use testimonials, use a similar case study, or one time I was helping Mary, and she was sorting through. We were able to get that done for her in 2 days with our professional resources and saved her all her nights and weekends and got her life back. That type of messaging is going to be something that's going to pull at them.
Okay. Makes sense. Awesome. Thank you.
And Eric, I'll only add one other thing, and that's this, that our most successful folks that have been doing this for literally years, they have a very simple approach, and it always includes direct mail because it's a multiple touch program. The whole idea is to make sure that you're top of mind whenever the motivation occurs to take action. And the more frequently you put your name in front of them, the better off you're going to be. Phone calls are great. Phone calls are better if they're augmented by mail, and you've already got a website, you've got landing pages there. Make sure anything you put out directs people back to your website. If you're not putting a QR code on what's going out with the card program that you're putting out there, you're missing a bet, because more and more people are using mobile phones to do all of this, and that QR code is a quick way to pop that. They'll look at it with their phone and go right to your site and look at what's there. Obviously, if you're doing that, we'd certainly like you to give us a shot of putting that stuff out. We do that for you, and we automate it as well and can certainly help you with that. We've got one more person that's in the queue that's been waiting really patiently, and we're already past the top of the hour. If you don't mind, I'm going to pop on and take him, and we're going to call it a day. Are you good?
I'm good. Thank you, guys.
Thanks,
okay,
Eric.
Bud. Thank you so much. I'm going to take our last caller for the day, ending in 3992.
Hello.
Yep, we hear you. Go ahead.
Okay. As an investor, rather than an agent trying to get a listing from some of these leads, if you got the personal representative and you verified that they can, in effect, sell the property, would you put together or draft your own purchase agreement, or would you let their attorney put it together, or would you give them the choice?
I would do it myself.
Yep.
100%.
I would.
100%.
Okay.
Yep, I agree. 100% use your own agreement, because you're definitely going to have the terms that are going to be favorable to your approach to business.
I thought that might be your answer, but I guess I wasn't sure. My second question would be, how do you know when you can actually, do you leave the closing date open? Because some of these states, you can't really close a transaction until the probate case is closed. So is that what you're finding most of the time, is you got to wait that term out?
I'm chuckling here a little bit, because what you're saying is in almost all states a misconception that the large portion of people have, and there are a couple of states that are different. But I've heard what you just said from people in almost every state in the country, and in almost every instance that they've said that, it's wrong. As long as the PR has received authority to sell the property, it can sell as long as the money goes into the estate's account and doesn't get distributed to the heirs. So you shouldn't have to wait. Now, I think that there's states, I'm thinking maybe, I don't know, we've got some folks from like Delaware that I think might be able to clarify this. I think Delaware might be a state where that's an exception. You have to wait till probate's done, but pretty much everywhere you're going to be able to close really quickly as long as that money goes to the estate's bank account and doesn't go to the heirs.
Yeah, it probably sits in there though, doesn't it?
Yeah, it sits in there, but you can still close.
Yeah.
Yep.
Because, there's other people that might have a claim against that property. And that's why when they file the probate, there's a date to file a claim, and that's the latest one can file a claim against the estate. That's why it's so confusing, is because when people read that as a buyer or investor, they see that and they go, well, geez, how could I pull that off? If the probate's going to close 6 months from now. So I mean, that's why so many people are confused. But I believe you, what you're saying, but that's why it's so confusing, is because that last date to file a claim is in every one of these notices.
Their confusion is your benefit. Now, in many, many cases, if they haven't run the newspaper, they haven't run the ads to the creditors yet, you may still have to wait for that series of ads to run. It's possible. But it's one of the reasons why just getting a deal isn't really the end all be all. You need to leverage that deal into a relationship with the attorney. The attorney is going to be able to fix any errors that you might make. The majority of our subscribers, especially in the early days, they're afraid to make mistakes. I love mistakes, because a mistake is an excuse for me to talk to the expert, who's the estate planning or the probate attorney, and get corrected. And guess what? I make that mistake, I've got the excuse to talk to the attorney. Now I'm friends with the attorney, and I'm going to get business from them. So sign the deal, put a date on there, and if it's wrong, the attorney will correct it. You make an adjustment. Now you've got a friend in the attorney.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. You probably couldn't close any house until you had it run it through a title company, and they're gonna run into that probate case, right?
Exactly. So who cares if you mess up?
Yeah. Would you say most of the probate cases across the country in most states run about 6 months?
There's no real answer to that.
Okay.
Yeah. Probate can last, I'd say, an average of 9 to 15 months. There are states and probate and estates that can settle in 4 months, and then there are those that take 2 years. I'd say that it's somewhere pushing close to 9 months, though, for most.
I see.
And there are circumstances where you can get an expedited close, and I've seen probate close in 30 days. So it literally just depends on the time, the place, and the market. And that one I speak from experience. When my dad passed away, we were able to get my parents' home sold, done, dealt with, and the estate closed in under 30 days because my mom needed the money for some healthcare issues and all that. We were able to get it done. We had a ready buyer for the property and got it all done. So I knew people in the court system, so that helped. But that's the kind of thing. Hey, I got to cut this off. Unfortunately, we're well past the top of the hour.
Yeah.
Had a lot of people waiting patiently. We appreciate your call, Robert. And
all right, thanks.
Looking forward to hearing from you in the future, bud. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks. We'll see you. Bye.
You bet. Guys, it's been a great call today. We really appreciate you being here. Jim always does this better than I'm going to even give it any credence for. But he always says, take one thing you heard, one thing you learned, go out and put it in practice. Come back next week and talk to us about the success you had. We certainly appreciate you all being here. It's been a great call. Thanks, Chuck. Thanks, Bruce. Jim, we'll look forward to having you back in 2 weeks. He won't be here next week either. He's got another thing he's got to go do, but we'll carry on without him. Thank you all. We're done.